Hiya! So I got these Peerless watercolors in my Scrawlrbox subscription this month, and they are so messy that I ended up covered in paint just from looking at them. Anyway, I've never used anything like it before, so I kind of decided that I'm gonna need a better way of being able to store them and pick them up and stuff. And I decided to make this kind of like a pad with swatches and everything. And when I started making it, I decided to make two sizes, one kind of bigger pad with pockets to hold all the bits in, and a smaller sort of travel size one, if you like. And yeah, I already had the camera set up from filming the upgrade vid, so I decided to just hit record, and here we are. I'm using watercolor paper because I know I'm going to be doing swatches later, and I'm taping a few sheets together so I don't have to cut them up individually. There are 12 colors in the set, so I've taken 6 sheets of paper and cut them up in half. So I'm giving each one of the colors one A5 size sheet. I've also taken one really thick grey A4 card and cut that in half for the front and back covers. And I'm also going to be doing 6 sheets of velum paper to cover it over the top so it doesn't smear and smudge onto the other sheets. I had a rough idea of how I wanted to divide them, but I wanted to be precise, so I kind of measured one and did the math on how many millimeters I'd need. But then of course I realized that each card was a slightly different size, so my measurements didn't really matter and I would have to measure each card individually. These are seriously so messy. I actually had to keep a packet of baby wipes, dry tissues, and alcohol swab things to clean off my fingers in between touching them. I also found it helps to use like a dry tissue to kind of brush off any dry pigment off the paper I was working on. And here I'm measuring a sheet of A4 paper into 12 pockets that I'm going to use to store all the cut up bits in. I've used 100 GSM smooth paper. I figured smooth so any kind of particles would just brush off of it easily rather than get ingrained. And I'm measuring each rectangle for 2 fold marks on either side to create the actual pocket that I'm going to stick to the A5 sheet. And now to make my life easier, instead of measuring and cutting up more bigger bits of paper, I decided the best way to go for my smaller pad would be to cut off 3 centimeters off the end of all the papers I'd already prepared, which is the card, the watercolor paper, and the velum. This would keep everything the same size and be big enough for the cut-ups of the watercolor cards that I've already measured. Now I'm making creases for the pockets, and this is where it starts getting a bit tedious and repetitive, and I started making cuts in the video, which I don't normally do when I'm drawing, but just to speed things along. I mean, you get the idea. I'm using washi tape to stick down the pockets, and I'm sticking them to different sides of the paper because I don't want the pad to end up being bulky to one side. Again, you've seen a couple, you get the idea, a bit of editing magic, and they're all done. Now back to the messy part. I figured as I'm cutting them up, I better write down the name on each bit of card that I'm going to end up with, just so I know what the color is regardless of what card I pick up. And yeah, then I cut them up. Now you can actually see this in the shot, but as I'm writing down each name, I'm also writing them on a separate bit of paper, so that later when I have to write them down on the pad, I don't actually have to touch these cards again, because yeah, my fingers are getting covered. Here my kitty decides to come and help me out. I usually let him sit on my desk while I'm drawing, but as I didn't let him sit on anything this time, he really wasn't impressed with these art supplies at all. In case you're wondering, I didn't actually spill anything on this purple one, it came like that in the pack, and the pigment on the other side is not in any way affected. Now I'm fiddling around with the washi tape trying to figure out how long I need to cut the strips. I'm sorry some of this is not in view, I didn't realize that when I was filming it. But the idea is that I want to stick a little portion to the back of each card where the name is, and have the top bit fold over in itself, so I have something to grab the card by without actually touching it. As I've already swatched these when I first opened the box, each color has one card where a little corner was activated with water. So I decided to just put a little pen mark on the washi tape. You can see where there's a little dark corner that had some water on it. Yeah, that way when they're all in the pocket together, I can tell by the top bit without pulling them all out to see which one I've already started using and which is still new. At this point, I need to write the color names onto each sheet so I know what goes where. That way I don't have to pull them out of the pockets to write the names in later. But I made a slight miscalculation by writing them in a bit too high. That way later when I have to hole punch them, they're going to end up being in the way. So I'm going to have to redo it, unfortunately, but it's not that big a deal. And of course I gotta label the small sheets as well. I'm writing in right at the bottom. That leaves enough space between the color card at the top and the name at the bottom for a little actual swatch of the color. I made the vellum sheets for the bigger pad about 1/2 centimeter longer than the watercolor paper, so that when I bend it over you don't actually see any of the washi tape that holds it down. I thought it'd be neater that way. For the smaller pad, as I cut them off the bottom of the sheets, they're actually exactly the same length, but I still stuck them down the same way because I didn't want to see the washi tape in the front, and I figured it leaves the name visible at the bottom, which also has kind of a nice look to it. This part was kind of satisfying, putting everything in its place. That thin bit of washi tape I'm sticking to the paint card on the thin pad was originally going to be temporary, just to hold it in place while I hole punch it. But then I figured I don't actually want the paint card itself swaying left to right in the pad, so I decided to just leave it there. Now, wouldn't you know it, on the very last card, my cute little single hole punch actually broke. So as I pressed it in, some bits of plastic came off of it, and I had to finish the hole by just cutting it out. Luckily, I didn't need it anymore anyway. I used just a regular hole punch for the bigger sheets. As I mentioned earlier, I made a slight miscalculation when I wrote in the color names, so now most of them have ended up getting hole punched, and I just ended up Tipp-Exing them out and writing them in a little bit lower and a little bit more centered. And then I realized that the really thick card I picked is actually too thick to fit in my hole punch. So I had to improvise a little bit. I hole punched a bit of vellum to mark out where I'm going to want the holes on the card, penciled them in, and just cut them out with a knife. I had a bit of a mishap with my phone. I thought I pressed record when I was threading this ribbon in. I think my battery was too low, so it didn't actually end up recording. But anyway, I plugged it in later, and you can see the small pad is now done, and I'm about to do the big one. I reckon at some point I'm going to take the time and decorate the front and back covers of this thing, but not in this video. Now this is the best part, swatching out the colors and watching these messy little cards come to life. Seriously, the pigment on these is absolutely amazing. It took me a little while waiting for the first page to dry, so I ended up getting my watercolor dryer and just drying them off, including the paint card. It's made things a lot quicker. They're really, really vibrant colors, and this was so much fun to do. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Thanks.